Welcome to our final forum for this year. The League of Women Voters conducts these forums as part of a voter education program.
It varies from year
The
to
League of
year.
Women Voters encourages citizen participation in government. Today we have two co-sponsors. First, the American Association of University Women. And that organization is celebrating 90 years as an organization this year, and its mission is education for women and equity in pay. And there's a lot of things that they do. They have some information over here, and then you can check that out before you leave. Please do that. Our other sponsor is Linn County Early Childhood, Iowa, and that organization is citizen-led. It's a partnership with Education, Health, and Human Service Program providers with funding from local, state, and federal sources. And its purpose is to enhance early childhood development experience of families with children aged prenatal to 5 years in the state of Iowa. So thank you to them. And we've got lots to do here today. We have had a few people, legislators, that couldn't make it. Most are here. And all were invited. Those that can't make it so far, and we still have some that might be coming because we've got some weather issues, as I said. Representative Reiser has an employment obligation, could not be here. Senator Horn may still be coming. We have a representative Running-Marquardt, I think, is coming right now. So I think everybody else is here, so thank you. Please note the cameras around the room. It's being streamed, this forum is being streamed on Mediacom and IMON for Pro Video and recorded by Neighborhood Network News. Instructions on how to stream or see the forums are located on the league table. And also, there's a sign-up sheet here for those folks that want to get involved in activities. So let me talk about the structure of the forum here today. What we're going to do is first have opening statements or opening remarks, 1.5 minutes each. And I would ask the legislators, please, we're always short on time, so if you could keep it to 1.5 minutes. Also, all answers to questions will be 1.5 minutes, but I'd ask you to do that as well, to keep it to 1.5 minutes. Please turn your cell phones off now. Please turn them off. Check them. I turned mine off, I'm pretty sure. If it goes off, I'll be embarrassed, but I think it's off. Please remain quiet throughout the forum, and by that I mean, let's not cheer, clap, boo, or anything like that during the forum. And in fact, don't boo at all, okay? Rather than not do that. And at the end, you can clap and cheer if you would like to. And in fact, why don't you? That would be great to thank these folks for being here. You're encouraged to submit questions. We have a lot of questions already, and I already know we're not going to have time to ask them all. So maybe the legislators could stay a little bit after, and you could ask questions of them if your question does not get asked. If your question is not asked, it's not because it's not important or because I don't want to ask it. It's just that we don't have enough time, and we've got limited TV time. So we will get to it here in a second. All right. Opening statements. And at the end, we've switched around a little bit, but why don't we start at this end with Representative Running-Marquardt. 1.5 minutes, please, each. Thank you.
Good morning, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. There's a lot of green in the room. I apologize for being tardy. I was getting ready for the parade coming up a little bit later today, and that just sort of took my time and my whatever. I'm Kirsten Running-Marquardt, state representative, serve sort of the downtown tall buildings, southwest side of Cedar Rapids, Fairfax, out to Linn County, Walford. I guess my opening statement is, we're sort of in the middle of the legislative session. One of a major funnel week just happened, and we're going to sort of see what bills made it out of the House committees soon, if you don't know all of them, but also the Senate committees. So if you had a bill that came up through the House, it had to not only go through the House this week, but also go through the opposite chambers committee. And so there was a lot of busy committee work this week moving forward. And there was a lot of bipartisan work happening as well. I think maybe we'll hit some of those topics, but just good morning to you all, and I look forward to answering some of your questions. Thank you.
All right, good morning. I'm State Representative Liz Bennett. I serve the majority of the southeast side of Cedar Rapids. I also have Nubo, Czech Village, and just a little smidge of the southwest side there. Also the neighborhood of Mound View on the northeast side of Cedar Rapids. So I'm very pleased to be here this morning. This is the first time I've had the opportunity to join you at this location for the forum, and so I thank you all for coming. As Representative Running-Marquardt said, we are at the end of the second funnel week. So there have been some bills that I think all of us have been watching that are not going to move forward. But there are some bills going forward that I am very concerned about and will be working on as we go forward. In particular, there is an unconstitutional bill to limit women's reproductive choices before most of them even know they are pregnant. Very concerned about defeating that bill. And also we have a very concerning energy bill in the legislature right now, which would gut energy efficiency programs, make energy more costly for Iowans, make solar more expensive, and really, I think, destroy some of the things that we have been able to brag about regarding our friendliness to clean energy. So I hope that we stop that.
Good morning. I'm State Senator Rob Hogue, represent Senate District 33 on most of the east side of Cedar Rapids and a little bit of the southwest side of Cedar Rapids. I want to thank the Kirkwood Regional Center for hosting us here. Nice facility. It's a little different setup than we're used to at Mercy Medical Center, but it's still great to be here. And it's a really important initiative of the for Kirkwood to have a facility like this to help students throughout the region. Representative Bennett mentioned some of the bills that we're trying to stop. It looks like, although you never know because bills can come back, but it looks like some of the bad bills that had passed out of the Senate did not advance out of committee this week, including the supermajority on the Supreme Court to rule a law unconstitutional. A really bad bill that would have created a new $1 million agency to try to prosecute and criminalize work comp fraud. I mean, it's just, when I think of the priorities in the state, I was so rampant with work comp fraud. I'm being facetious here. I'm making a joke. Just we really need a new $1 million agency when we're short all the other money. And of course, adjournment is coming, and I've challenged the Senate Republicans to wrap up the session by March 28th to match Chet Culver's budget-saving measures in 2010. That would save us $812,000 if they can get done by $812,000, and each day they go beyond that's an extra $38,000 it costs the state. Thank you.
I'm Representative Louis Zumba, House District 95. Is this on? No, I can't. All right. You might not. I've got a cold, so I apologize for that. Liz may not want to speak in the same microphone now. I represent House District 95. On a couple of notes for our district, it's basically rural Linn County and a little bit of Buchanan. I promised my wife I'd explain why I haven't shaved. The Linn County Extension is putting together a dinner theater next Saturday, of which I'm a part in, and you're all welcome to come. You can get your tickets through the Linn County Extension office, and I'm sure the people in the house will wonder what's going on when I get there, and I'm really look like that. But anyhow, I too am concerned about several bills. I'm also very concerned about our power plant at Palo, continuing to stay open and reaching an agreement with Linn Energy. That's not a bill, or anything, but I'm really concerned about that. And I'm concerned about several other bills that are coming up.
Thank you. Mr. Jeremy, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm Senator Liz Mathis, and you are in my district. This is Hiawatha, so thank you so much. Be sure to go to Roasters. We got some coffee at Roasters, Carbon Coffee Cafe, the Lucky Penny. Please indulge. We had a lot of distraction this week. We had a Republican majority leader resign from office, so that was a little distracting. We do have a number of bills that are dead now. I'm going to list them. Campus free speech. as Rob said, Supreme Court supermajority, banning highway protests, religious freedom, scrapping state regulations, which is a Koch brothers bill. Americans for Prosperity might be here today. Chris Honig just opened an office here in Cedar Rapids. School carry, Medicaid work requirements, civics exams, school bus rides, racial profiling, school diversity, and one democratically supported bill, bicycle safety. Those are dead bills. Positive, we were able to move the complex needs mental health bill, and we'll be working with counties as we move forward, regions as we move forward with that. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Todd Taylor, and most of my district is northwest Cedar Rapids and part of southwest Cedar Rapids. I will carry on right where Senator Mathis left off and give you a little bit of what's dead and what's still alive for as far as bills at that point in the session, the second funnel. Maybe I'll mention a few different ones. Bills not dead, or bills that are dead are to political discrimination for university faculty. That's not going to proceed. Reinstating the death penalty, ending retirement security for public employees, that'd be IPERS and 411, et cetera, and removing state accreditation for community colleges. We're not going to do that. So that's good. Now on the positive side, we're still working on prohibiting food shaming and also expanding safe haven laws, Good Samaritan laws for protecting those seeking emergency assistance. And these are bipartisan laws at this part of my comments. And then also another one, guaranteeing health coverage for services provided over telemedicine. So there are several bipartisan things we're working on and several things that are hyperpartisan that are kind of past the first funnel, and we shouldn't be seeing some of those. I will tell you that this has been a particularly frustrating General Assembly last year and this year, and I guarantee you that next year will be vastly different, just with the sheer number of candidates running for all of the offices across the state, from the governor all the way down, and then just the people who are retiring or seeking other offices and so on. But I'm happy that you're here. And don't forget, today's St. Patty's Day, and 2 days from now, it's going to be St. Joseph's Day in red. So.
Thank you. I'm Representative Art State from Northeast Cedar Rapids District, House District 66. And I wanted to thank all of you for being here this morning. It's really enlightening to see so many people are participating in your democracy and asking the questions that you need to ask. Because there's always so many questions, I will stay afterwards too, so if you have input or questions for me, I would appreciate that. I'm on the Education Committee, the Veterans Affairs, Local Government, International Relations, and on the Economic Development Budget Subcommittee. So there's been a host of bills that have been through that are policy right now. I'm looking forward to the shift from the policy to our budget, which will let us all know where the priorities lie. So I look forward to your input. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Art, we're getting a little close. We all work close together.
Bipartisan.
Yeah, right. I'm State Representative Ashley Hinson. You are also in my district. Liz and I share this part of the area of Hiawatha, so welcome. I'm glad to be here. Wanted to kind of run through some of the things that I've been working on. I have a full list of the funnel survivors if anybody wants to find me afterward, and if there's a specific bill you're curious about, I've got the list is 22 pages long, so in terms of like little descriptions afterwards. So if you have a question, you can find me afterward. I'd be happy to run you through that. This week was an exciting week for me. We ran the bill about the traffic cameras in Cedar Rapids and around the state this week. I was a floor manager for that piece of legislation, and we approached it in a way we haven't approached many bills, where we let our caucus and the Democrat caucus have a free vote on it. We have competing ideas on whether or not we should regulate or ban, and so we let both ideas get their fair shake on the floor. It was really refreshing, I think, for a lot of us to see a vote happen that way. It ended up that our chamber passed the regulation bill. I'd be happy to walk any of you through that. It's quite lengthy, so I won't waste time talking about that, but I have kind of a rundown of what it does if anybody wants to know. Another bill I think that was really, really positive this week, we ran a House resolution, a joint resolution, there's the same in the Senate, but that we would stop taking people's driver's licenses away automatically if they have a drug conviction. I touched on some of the justice reform things that I've been working on, but basically I think it's overly punitive to keep somebody from getting their driver's license after they've already served their time in jail, so they can get back to work and continue to be a good member of society. So that's one bill that I think was really, really a positive that came out of our chamber this week. And I'm done. Okay.
Thank you all, and thank you for moving it along, I appreciate it. As one of the co-sponsors, they have the privilege of asking the first question, so I'm going to get a question from them, and it is about daycare. Daycare for low income and working families, especially nights and weekends, and also early education. And if we could start with Representative Henson. You're up again, so we'll start on your end. And if you prefer, if you don't have anything to add, or if it's the same thing somebody else has said, please feel free to just say, I don't have anything to add, and no one will hold it against you. So, did you hear the question?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
So I have 2 school-age children, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, so I understand the extreme cost that goes along with childcare. I think at its highest, I paid $19,000 one year for childcare. So I can only imagine someone who has a lower income burden. Childcare is an incredible burden on a family, and it can be a great barrier to getting a better job. So I know that we are currently talking about art reference. We're getting ready to work on our budgeting. We will have some increased dollars going to childcare assistance as well in our budget. We do have a line item for that already. I would like to see that number grow, but I do understand that childcare can be a barrier, and we need to try to do what we can to help people have access to affordable childcare.
Thank you. I think affordable child care is one of the critical things that we need to look at, particularly when we're offering incentives for companies to come to the state of Iowa and there are huge tax breaks. I think part of the deal should be that company offer child care for their employees. And that's something that we need to do. So it's an economic incentive as well as to help families. A majority of the families in Iowa have both parents or everyone in that family working, and that's something that's extremely important, that we have available child care for people so they can keep jobs. The second thing is I think we should expand our access to preschool so that every parent that wants a child to be in the preschool program in their community has access. Thank you.
I would just say something very briefly. Our state senator, Wally Horn, is retiring. I'm running for his seat. And as I vacate House 70, we have a candidate, Tracy Ehlert, and she's here today. She's unopposed, but she is a child care specialist. And so as a legislator, I don't need to know everything about everything, but I need to know where to go and get some information from people. And I would refer to people who are child care specialists as far as how we need to make some policy changes. The bottom line is we invest in child care, people can get jobs, and they can have their kids safe while they're at work, and it expands the opportunity. So that's just a little plug that I would make. Thank you.
I think some of the things that help pay for daycare are things like earned income tax credit, which we really want to, if we're going to pass a tax reform bill, we need to make sure that that stays on that bill and that's provided for by people who really need it. We need to work with businesses, certainly that Representative State talked about in offering some incentives so that they can develop some type of daycare. Kirkwood offers daycare programs that are excellent as you're a student going to school there. We have also at the state level offered incentives to parents who are part-time work and part-time school. And as long as they're moving forward in their school, daycare is at a low or no cost to them. And also on the Future Ready Iowa bill, I think I feel an amendment coming on because it's certainly a part and parcel of where we want to go with our workforce, because if there's a couple or a single mom and they want to better themselves, we should certainly try to help with that. We should certainly try to address daycare in the Future Ready Iowa bill.
I think preschool and daycare is something that, especially in the rural area, can be helped by your school. I think Central City is an example of that, where they have a great daycare, and as enrollment's growing because of that. And those are the things that we should concentrate in making better to promote rural schools growing instead of diminishing.
Let me say a couple things. Representative Hinson mentioned, can you hear me okay? Okay, very good. Representative Hinson mentioned that she's anticipating an increase in the child care assistance in the budget. Well, that will be good if that happens. We haven't seen the budget yet, and it's getting awfully late. So I'm hoping that the Republican majorities will stop some of the stuff they have been doing and focus on the budget and try to get us out in a timely fashion, as I indicated earlier. Obviously, long run, this is essential for families and it's essential for our economy to have high quality child care and early childhood education for every young person in our state. I think I'd like to see some things someday. It's not going to happen this year, but someday things like paid family leave. I think that'd be a really good thing that we could do. Find a way to do that. Making sure that they're increasing child care assistance. A couple years ago, we passed that in a divided government. Senate that was majority Democrats, House that was majority Republicans. We passed it. Unfortunately, Governor Branstad vetoed the expansion of eligibility for child care assistance and just generally funding for early childhood and preschool. Really important to do those things. Thank you.
Thank you. I would echo a number of the ideas I've heard. One thing that I think is really important to talk about is that daycare and childcare, in many ways, is a separate topic from early childhood education. You know, and a lot of times in the public conversation, I hear people say things like, "Oh, early childhood education that's just babysitting, that's just daycare." Well, it's not. We know the research on how kids benefit from that early learning, especially children with other barriers in their lives. So I think that every kid in Iowa should have that opportunity for that early enrichment and to really learn how to learn. So I'd like to make sure that we can focus on that in the future. You know, the other thing when we talk about child care is that it's a barrier for families who can afford to pay for it because, as Representative Hinson stated, it's going to be $19,000 a year, for goodness sakes. But then there's also the barrier of the child care cliff for families who do receive assistance with child care. And some of you may know about the cliff. That's something that I'd like to bring some awareness to, because what that means is that many families, oh, I'm getting shut off, but many families are just right on the edge where if they make 50 cents more or $1 more per hour, then all of that assistance that they get just goes away. So we need to address this in a way that allows people to grow and move forward while still being able to have affordable child care. It's kind of a chicken and egg type thing.
Hello.
Is this for Liz Mathis?
Free cup of coffee if you say the coffee place name right.
Is it under $2? It's free. Is it under $2?
Thank you, yes it is. It's under the $3 limit. It's like
I would have known that, I would have mentioned it.
You can have some water. That was brilliant.
Go ahead.
That was brilliant.
This didn't come out of your time.
A few things, I know that Senator Mathis just briefly mentioned a little bit about 3 years ago, we passed legislation, and myself and Representative Heaton in the House and Senator Mathis really championed it through the Senate on the flexibility piece that allows for people who are receiving school aid and they want to work, and then they also need a little bit of assistance for childcare so that they can move forward and move their whole family forward. And it sounds like something real little, but that was a bill that we had to work hard for, and it took several years to make that one little change that really has an impact on Iowa families moving forward. And then that impact also ends up saving taxpayer dollars later because we were getting people off assistance sooner. So making small changes like that to make government work for people, all Iowans, is really sort of one of my priorities. I know many of the legislators on this sitting at the table with me as well. Child care is also a workforce development issue. And you know, I see Kirkwood here today representing, and they've really partnered with us on many workforce development issues. They sort of are workforce development sitting there, and the child care is one of those things that they've been working with us on and is critical. I also, you know, working on not only early childhood education, but child care and daycare, we need to work at ways that we can treat those as well, so we can reach quality, affordable child care, but we also need to make sure that we have the training in place and that we are paying people who are caring for our children like the professionals they are. So that's a balance as well that conversation hasn't really, we haven't had the ability to have that conversation happen because we're just hoping and praying, you know, that the child care assistance that those funds will come in. And so I look forward to the day, and I am really excited because we've got a lot of great candidates coming up that are running for office that really put child care assistance and workforce development as a priority of theirs. And I'll give my time away on one of my other questions, I promise. But, I'm really excited, not only the people on this panel, but some of the other candidates that are running for office that also understand the importance of child care to the Iowa family. Thank you.
We have so many questions, and I'm going to start with one that I have the most on this topic. Funding of higher education, funding of community colleges, and K through 12 funding, so lots of questions on education. And we could start with Senator Hoke, and then maybe go to your left and come around this way.
Well, obviously, education funding is really important. The majority party, the Republicans, provided 1% for our schools. That is the second lowest level of school increase in the history of the school finance formula. Really inadequate. I had one superintendent tell me that that's not even going to cover their increase in utilities, and so that's a problem. That's not helping us catch up on funding to the rest of the country. We don't have to be the highest in the country, but we can't fall so far behind the rest of the country in school funding that it begins to hurt. And I think we're actually in that position where it is hurting. On higher education, we haven't seen the FY19 budget. FY18 budget, Senate Republicans have a proposal to cut the universities by $14.5 million. That's $180 per student at Iowa State and UNI, plus a proposal to cut the community colleges by $1.8 million and take $10 million away from our skilled workforce programs that are administered by the community colleges. So those are two major steps in the wrong direction. They are harmful. They are unnecessary. The state has a rainy day fund in excess of $600 million, and Governor Reynolds in her budget was proposing to increase the rainy day fund by $72 million. And I would think avoiding these cuts should be a higher priority than adding to our rainy day funds. That's my opinion.
Educational funding was up by $32 million this year, which is roughly 1%. It's at $700 and some million dollars more in the last 11 years, I believe. I meet regularly with superintendents from Center Point, Northland, Elburnett, Mount Vernon, Lisbon, Central City. We try to, as a group, try to field the needs that they have, those school districts. SAVE is one of their biggest priorities, that we do SAVE. I believe that's still on the docket, which is the 1% tax. The other thing is operational sharing. Is that still on, Ashley? Mm-hmm. So that's still on the docket. Those are two of the most important things that they wanted. House Republicans are always fighting for our community colleges and trying to keep them whole as best we can. And we, try to do the best job that we can with the amount that we're given.
1% isn't enough. It's just not enough. I have a group of superintendents that I email quite frequently in my district. And when that number came up, I said, well, what do you think about the number? And they are at the point where they're saying, we'll take what we can get. But they agree it's not enough. And I just couldn't vote yes on the bill that was saying we were going to give 1% because I thought it should be more. We have fixed costs at schools, utilities, supplies, and that affects, when you have to pay those fixed costs, that affects then your class size and your curriculum offerings. And it's just a fact. And so if you don't keep up with the budget, other than fixed costs, you're going to have some problems. We want to be the best in the nation. We need to fund it as the best in the nation. And I feel like over the last couple of years, we haven't been as creative and innovative as we could with some of our legislation. We've taken some steps backward. Some of our legislation is really old and stale. And I think that we need to take another step forward in this. And some of our legislators who talk about education, they talk about it like it's in the 1950s. And you know, if it shows me that they haven't gone into a school and they haven't talked to teachers and they haven't talked to principals and viewed what's really going on in the classroom, the struggles and the successes.
We all want to see results with the money that we spend, and so the community colleges, for example, have done everything we've asked them to do. We asked them to handle displaced workers when we have a plant closing, and train non-traditional students, and several other things around, and expand around our region. You know, we have a Monticello facility, we have this facility, not just our central campus. So they have focused, like we've asked them to as legislators, from the report card to the W-2. So train on jobs, train to get people jobs, and that's going to open up opportunities. So I'd like to see results. So if we say 1%, and that's a good number, and here's $780 million over several years, fine. But what are the results where we're seeing declining test scores and classroom sizes are going up? And you've heard me say, I personally witnessed it. Jefferson High School, you can't put a 34th kid in one of these classrooms. So we need to, so 1% isn't enough, whatever the number is. So look at the results. And we need to stop strangling our apprenticeship programs. So we have higher education, but we also have apprenticeship programs. This week in the House, they talked about making it more difficult for our other skilled trades to get assistance. And so that's still a work in progress, but we have a lot of work to do.
Thank you. I would say that education is the key to success, the key to prosperity, the key to quality of life. It's the key to the future of the children here in Iowa, and it is our #1 priority, I think, in government, that we have good quality education in the state of Iowa. That's extremely important. And so what we're seeing right now, on one hand, we're hearing from the majority party that they want to cut taxes by $1 billion in taxes over the next few years. At the same time, cuts to the community colleges, cuts to our universities, only a 1% allowable growth for our schools. We have rising tuition at our colleges and universities. We have increasing student debt. We have students that are priced out of education, of higher education, that can't afford to go. So we need to shift and make sure that our education system, K-12, community colleges, and our Regents institutions are fully funded. That needs to take place soon. What's been happening over the last 6 to 7 years is unconscionable. Thank you.
I'm on the Appropriations Committee, so I just want to lay out some numbers here because I think it's important to understand context of every dollar in our budget competing against every dollar. We have a finite amount of money that we have to work with, and we have to be judicious in how we spend those dollars. So I just want to relay some statistics that from 2012 to 2018, so in the last 6 years, we've seen our overall budget grow by over $1 billion, from $6 billion, just over $6 billion, to $7.26 billion. Of that, state aid to schools has increased by $569.2 million. Medicaid and mental health has increased by $218.6 million. And then property tax backfill and other property tax credits, $332 million. And the rest of state government has only grown by $132 million. So as you can see, it's tight already. We have devoted new money to schools and increased that funding in a time when other agencies in our budget did not see increases. And so I think priority-wise, it has been a priority of us to make sure that we are funding education and increasing those dollars when it is possible. So we're trying to make sure that we weigh those decisions carefully. We put money where it is going to be the most effective. And some of the legislation that we've really tried to focus on has been flexibility-based, because previously we had restrictions on pots of money, and we've tried to loosen those so that schools can use the money where they think it's most effective. And we think that was a very thoughtful approach in how those dollars can be used on the local level.
I also serve on the Appropriations Committee, and I've served on the Appropriations Committee for 9 years, all 9 that I have served as a state legislator. And I do agree with Representative Henson and some of her numbers that she just gave to us. It's also, we look at every single dollar that goes out, but we also have to be looking at that we appropriate as legislators, and the governor signs into law. But we also need to, and this isn't kind of a cop-out, but we have different tax credits that go, they just fly out the door. Nobody even checks them. A lot of the R&D ones are really difficult to kind of muster, and I know that comes out of the Ways and Means Committee. But if we are eyeballing every single dollar that comes out one way, and we're not necessarily doing the same scrutiny on the other ones, something is wrong and something is off with the way we're budgeting in the state of Iowa. And the collective bargaining bill that was passed last year, I know you're like, why does that have anything to do with it? Well, right now, school districts, we gave them 1%, but that barely even covered their cost of just operating and opening the doors. And so when they come to look at, the teachers, the professionals in their building, and the contracts that are coming out right now and the negotiations that are going on, it's really discouraging. We have states that are coming in and poaching our teachers. And so we know for sure that class size getting larger does not work well for our children to achieve better in the state of Iowa. So we've got a real problem with that. And then also, kind of stepping back a couple feet, we cannot attract the people that we need for this workforce, for the state that we need in a couple years here. We're reaching the cliff for workforce development. If our schools are bad, because if we have good public schools, then more people will come and more people will stay here in the state of Iowa and raise their family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have, I'm sorry. We have one more. My apologies. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I really appreciate a lot of the things that have been said. I want to focus this a little bit on the effect that this has on real people out there. Maybe many of the folks in this room, maybe your kids, your grandkids, and I myself. So let's talk about student debt, because what we're talking about when we're not funding our community colleges and we're not funding our Regents institutions is an increased rate of borrowing on the part of students just to get through. And that can have major impacts, not just on those students, but also our economies. Because the interest that you're paying on your student loan debt is money that you're not spending buying a house, you're not spending buying a car, things like that. I'll just tell you guys, so I have two loans. I have a little state loan and then I have a big federal loan. I paid over $2,000 of interest on my federal student loan last year. 2016 graduates of Iowa's colleges and universities, $292,201,024 basically, or $294 million. That's how much we're owing. Average public university debt for students in Iowa is $27,000. So we really need to be funding our regions. We need to be funding our community colleges. These are the routes that people are taking to have a good life here in the state of Iowa. So it really has to be a priority, folks.
Thank you. We did a survey when you came in about what do you want to hear about, and we've already covered education funding. That was number one. Number two was reproductive rights, fetal heartbeat bill, and variations thereof. So 70-some people here wanted to hear about that. Okay, so I think I should ask a question of you about that, and generally, what is your position on that bill and on reproductive rights? And let's start with Representative Zumbach, please.
Well, in all honesty, I'm surprised it wasn't the first question. Is this on? It doesn't sound good.
Get it up to your mouth, it is.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right. I was surprised this was not the first question. As I understand it, the bill that's coming forth is actually about selling fetal body parts with an amendment. With an amendment, yes. So, nobody, I don't think anybody's for selling fetal body parts. With the amendment, in a nutshell, I've said before, I've got 4 daughters. Every day, we make choices in life, and I'm not going to make that choice for them. I hope they never have to make that choice, but that's how I feel, and that's how I'm going to vote. However, the bill in itself of selling fetal body parts, it's the amendment that makes the bill bad, and it may change before it comes to the floor, if it even comes to the floor.
So The fetal heartbeat bill started in the Senate, was sent over to the House, and we really believed that it wouldn't be taken up, and then it was amended onto a fetal tissue bill. So, first of all, it's unconstitutional. There was a 1973 decision, Roe v. Wade. So the amount of money that's going to be spent on something that is unconstitutional, waste of time. No state has been able to even get to that point. I really believe that the people behind this, Bob Vanderplatz and the family leader, are trying to make a name for themselves, trying to put themselves on the map. I don't believe that it's about caring about women or women's health. And fetal body parts are not sold in the state of Iowa. They're not sold in the state of Iowa. These are healthcare decisions that women should make for themselves. And if they have to make the difficult decision, they should always have the option of discussing this with family, discussing this with their doctors, discussing this with clergy. And to make this shameful and to make it, at one time it was criminal, although they took the criminal intent out for doctors, is unfathomable. It's just unbelievable that we're talking about this in 2018. So those are my thoughts.
I'm sorry to say, but the Republicans own this. They have control over every legislation that comes forward, and it went through the House and to the Senate. It's over in the House. It's unconstitutional. We'll see if it actually makes it to the floor. I don't support it. It takes away rights. And let's not forget what Chuck Grassley did by holding the Supreme Court position open for so long, because I think they're hoping that an unconstitutional bill gets all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and then they can flip Roe v. Wade or something like that. It's a ploy that is played every time we have an election. It's very frustrating, and I think we just need to move on and talk about other things.
Thank you. I too know that the bill is a bill that has no exemptions, no choices, and women's health decisions should be made between themselves, their family, and their doctor, and it's also unconstitutional, so I'm a no on this as well.
I know it has seen some changes. I haven't had a chance to review it since it came through committee on Thursday. I know Louis mentioned it was amended onto another bill on Thursday. The way I would look at it is, going forward, we will have the same test that we would approach any bill with in our caucus. 59 people in a room, and we don't all agree on everything. So I think there will be some major discussions happening behind closed doors, obviously, while we determine if we're going to bring it to the floor or not. And at that point, after we discuss if there will be any more changes, I'll be happy to talk about how I'm going to vote on it. I'm not going to say either way today, because I don't think that's responsible. There could be some changes before it comes Thursday, but in general, I think that we took the penalties out, which was a big sticking point for me personally, and I didn't think we should try to undo the 20-week abortion ban that we worked hard on last year. I think that will save lives, and I think that did do some good for the pro-life movement. We have a pro-life caucus, and we'll be continue to have those discussions going forward.
So, like Representative Todd Taylor brought up, it is an election year. It really disgusts me how these bills come up on election years, because it's such a troubling time in some families' lives, and these are things and discussions, personal discussions they're having with their families and with their doctors. And for us to say that the people in Des Moines should be in that doctor's office with those families who are making these very hard decisions is wrong. I will be a hard no on the bill. I also, you can tell that it's maneuvering, because they know that this language has passed in other states even, and federal judges have said that this is unconstitutional. So again, we're going to be passing something that would not only violate people's rights in the state, but then also cost us a lot of money in future litigation and resources and time and energy, when our government should be working towards moving our entire state forward and not being in doctors' offices with the discussions they're having with their patients. Thank you.
This bill is one of the worst examples of government overreach I can possibly think of. With this bill, this is the state of Iowa overreaching right into women's uteruses and their most private and personal decisions that they could possibly make. Bills like this say to women, number one, that we have the right to control you for the next 9 months and beyond, that you can't make your own decisions, that you don't own your body, you're subject to control in our society. I think this bill is inhumane. There are no exceptions for rape or incest. In the committee meeting the other day, the question was asked, given the fact that young girls start menstruating earlier and earlier now, it's shocking, sometimes 8 or 9 years old, would there be an exception for an incest victim who is very young and had started menstruating and conceived as a result of that abuse? And the person leading the bill, Representative Shannon Lindgren, just said there is no exception for that in the bill. Is this the society we want to live in? I mean, this is appalling, so I will absolutely vocally oppose this bill.
I voted against it last month when the Senate passed it, and I think the key here is that regardless of whatever somebody's personal views, government shouldn't be making these decisions. Thanks.
We got everybody now on that one? Okay. Shockingly, there are a whole bunch of questions on taxes. Should we have a tax cut? What's your position on tax cuts? Do we need a constitutional amendment? There's all sorts of tax and budget questions. So I would like to start now with Representative Bennett and then go the other way, just so we mix it up a little bit. So if you could start and give us your position on those things. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a broad question. One of the things I've been interested in since I first ran for office is our tax code fair? When we're doing things like tax cuts, tax credits, it seems like a lot of times the tax credits get justified as like, oh, we're bringing young professionals to the state, we're bringing businesses to the state. I'm not sure that that's always the case. So I think we need to do a really thorough review of those tax credits to determine, are we creating good, high-quality jobs? Are we actually seeing a net benefit to the state? Because I think everybody would agree that, we don't want money going out in that way if it's not actually benefiting all of the citizens of Iowa. So that's something I think we certainly need to look at. I think we need to look at things like earned income tax credit. I think we want to make sure that folks are paying their fair share, that our taxes do not become regressive. That's a conversation I see going on. And beyond that, I would really have to look at a proposal that was on the table to make a comment on that particular proposal.
So I have not seen the language that, I know the governor has made some proposals. The House and the Senate, I think, are still sort of waiting to unveil all of the details of their tax bill. But, we have to look at this and what's fair and reasonable. And, I am for Iowans keeping more of their hard-earned money. But I think that if we're going to do that, we have to look at that as a whole picture of what priorities Iowans have as well with the tax dollars they are sending into the state. And I'll take a fair and balanced approach to it. This is also sort of a good time to say that in the beginning of session, it's really all about policy bills that don't have taxes, appropriation, or fees in them. And then since this last funnel, from now on, we're going to see budget targets, hopefully will be coming out soon. And then we'll also get a picture of, so appropriations, taxes, and fees sort of things, and all those things that impact our budgets. Those will be coming out in the next couple weeks, I believe. And so then we'll have those discussions that you can see where the Republicans are in charge, so we'll see where their priorities are at. And I'm sure we'll have a lively debate on the priorities of not only the taxes that will be cut, but then also the appropriations and the tax giveaways to other folks as well. So, thank you.
Is it me? Oh.
I'm sorry.
No. So the REC, the Revenue Estimating Conference, met just a little over a week ago,
and their adjustments were not as big of swings as we've seen in the past. I guess you'd call it recent history, where they've been off by a significant amount. That said, we realize that we have to make our budget based on that number, which is unfortunate when it's wrong, and then we have to make the adjustments after the fact. One thing we are trying to do, we had a group of researchers come in from Pew to present to our committee about some of the things that we might do as a state to counteract some of those budget swings. And so they called it smoothing in the sand. So you've got your peaks where your revenue really goes up, and then what do we like to do in the state government? We like to spend it, and then it comes down, and then all of a sudden you have to make reductions. So one thing we are trying to do going forward through the budgeting process is trying to come up with a process to help maybe use some of our dollars to smooth out those peaks and valleys so that we can be more consistent in our budgeting and we don't have to make mid-year budget adjustments. So that's one thing that we are working on going forward. We will be setting our budget targets hopefully within the next week or two. We're obviously trying to get out on time this year and make sure we can do that, but any tax reform we do, we're being pragmatic about it because we understand, as I mentioned earlier, there is a finite amount of money that we have to work with, and we don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse in terms of spending when we are already very, very tight in our budget. So any tax reform that we look at, we are being cognizant of the amount of money we have to work with too.
I don't know if you're confused about the budget. Anybody here confused about the budget? So you've been hearing over and over, we had de-appropriations, and we couldn't meet our budget to provide money for DHS, to the courts, to Medicaid, for education, so on. The money was scarce. We borrowed $114 million from the reserve. The governor borrowed again, if you remember, before the first of the year, and those are yet to be paid back. So we're hearing over and over that nothing can be funded properly because of our budget crisis. And then we hear that we have so much tax that we can return to people $1 billion worth of taxes. And we also have been asking year after year for tax reform, to look at where the money is going out, that we give away billions of dollars before it ever makes it to the budget in the state. So we need to take a close look at it in a bipartisan way to see where the funding is going, to make sure that we fund our priorities. I believe that there are funds and that there are places where there can be tax breaks, but I don't think that we should be going to this overall tax break that I think is kind of a payoff for votes in an election year. I think we need to fund our priorities and balance this budget once and for all. Thank you.
And I know time's running out. I will say that I'll try to add something different that hasn't been said. In this political climate, I'm almost in favor of changing the Constitution in no way whatsoever. So I'm not in favor of a constitutional amendment to change on taxes, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. It would tie our budget only to economic growth, and that would kill Cedar Rapids if we had a disaster. And maybe we will have a disaster sometime. And the property tax cut that we did a few years ago, we promised that we would backfill that to the locals. And now yesterday's news, they're talking about, no, we can't afford that. We're not going to give money back to the local entities, the cities and the counties. And so all that's going to do is cause either cuts in services for the things that you want, like ambulance service or whatever. And also, it's going to make sure that that property taxes go up on the local level. So that's not worth it either. And there's more to say, but time's running.
Well, the day after the Senate, Republicans passed their tax reform bill in the Senate with a $1 billion a year cut. I was joined on the elevator by a Republican representative, and the door closed, and he said, what are those Republicans smoking over there? And I said, well, it's not medical cannabis. We know we haven't done anything like that. I think that the representatives, I'm hoping that they're going to change this because it's a dirty, rotten bill that went over, especially when we haven't de-appropriated yet for this fiscal year, and we haven't even looked at the budget for next fiscal year. We're going to be logical about this, and I use that term, loosely out in the legislature, but if we're going to be logical, why are we doing this? I hope that the House gravitates towards a more fiscally responsible tax reform. I think everybody wants to see tax cuts, right? There isn't one person in this room that wouldn't like to see tax cuts, but it has to be done responsibly. Oh, you want to see it? Okay, you want your taxes to go up? Well, you can stand in the corner over there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, as far as the budget goes, the House Republicans are not working off the Senate plan, they're working off the governor's plan. And then there's a common sense approach that I believe in that has to do with funding I-wills, which if you were to do that and use the penny, to make a long story short, it would put money back into RIF, which is overspent. It would put money back into property tax people's hands through mental health, because we could fund mental health through that penny. It also puts a significant amount of money back in the general fund, which could go to education, justice, public safety. We can list whatever your fancy is there, but there would be money to relieve some of those things. And it actually leaves money still that could be used for income tax reform that could soften the regressiveness of what you may think that tax is. It's a lot of support, according to polls, for that type of legislation. I'm certainly for it, have been for it since I ran last year. And as far as the backfill goes, I'm not for not doing the backfill. I believe, although I wasn't there, that was a commitment they made. I hear a lot of people say, well, it was only supposed to be for 5 years. Maybe that's how they meant it. Unfortunately, that's not how it was written. So I wasn't there, so I can't say whether that was that way. Can I use my 30 seconds? I gave up on several others.
Yeah.
Or not. I don't want to take your time.
Do it.
So anyway, I was short on all those other answers, so I could take it up on taxes.
Time's up.
30.
I just think that there are methods that aren't being investigated very well by the people that should be investigated. That's my opinion. I think it has a lot of merit. I think there's several people at the table here that I've pretty much talked to everybody about it. Maybe not you, Liz, sorry. But I will today.
Okay.
But I think there are other ways out of this than just cutting, because eventually you can only cut things so low. It's no different than any other business. You can get so low and then there's just nothing left to cut. Sorry, I took some of your time.
No, that's just fine, Representative Zumba. Let me just say this. I hope if the House takes the bill up that they will have a vote on the Natural Resources Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund. We had a vote last year in the Senate on it, and I think we should know where people stand on that. One of the big tax issues right now is the significant delay in tax refunds. I had a constituent contact me this week. She hadn't received a refund after 5 weeks, and whether just the timing was right, or I'm a miracle worker when I complained she got her tax refund.
Everybody's going to be emailing.
Right, that's not good. That's not a good position for us to be in.
Email Rob.
The other thing is there are some significant tax increases in both the Senate Republican plan and the governor's plan. Credit unions, taking away the solar energy tax credits. Governor Reynolds has a significant tax increase on digital commerce. And I think people need to slow down. After 8 years of Branstad and Reynolds, we can't even balance the budget in the middle of the budget year, according to the Republicans. So why would we be cutting taxes now? Thank you.
That's everybody on that question. All right. We have a series of questions here that have been asked in have not been asked in prior forums, and they were promised that would be asked this time. So I better keep our promise. And that is about affordable housing for the poor. And time, are we doing okay on time?
It's 11:35.
You're going to give me a tie sign when there's 10 minutes left, so.
Okay.
I think
We're 5 over, but just hit it.
Oh, all right. All right, so this is going to be the last question then, is that what? All right. They're all shaking their heads. So then, if this is the last question, I will, before we ask that question, thank the legislators for coming. We very much appreciate it. There was a survey done. I will give you a copy of this. And the top 5 things people wanted to hear from you about were school funding, abortion, mental health funding, IFERS funding and programs, and reinstating DHS funding. All about funding something. We have a copy of this for you, so thank you again for everybody for coming. Thank you for your time today, and we'll start with Senator Mathis.
Okay, so we're giving final statements here, I guess. You know,
We're not going to have closings, but we're going to, this is the last question, so if you'd like to sum up with something else.
Yeah, about funding. So about affordable housing. So affordable housing is the question?
Yeah, it's what can be done to help with affordable housing? Are you in favor of some kind of support for affordable housing for the poor? There are very limited housing available, and there's a bunch of statistics in these questions about it.
Yes. I think many of you know that I work for a child welfare agency and for an affordable housing group, and they've worked diligently in Wellington Heights to make sure that there's affordable housing for families. And so there's an IFA program, an Iowa Finance Authority program called HIP. And it's a housing incubator program. And so people can sign up for it. And if they, generally, if they don't have very good credit, they spend about a year with Horizons, with their financial counselors, and they work on getting better credit while they are paying rent on a house. And then part of that house rent is put into escrow so that they can put a down payment on the house after 3 to 5 years. And so as they're building their credit and going through classes, they're also putting money away so that then they can invest in something that they can keep. And I think that's one of the best programs that IFA offers, along with low interest loans for people who qualify. They're doing some really good work all across the state. We have to make sure that we have the lower rent so that people will be able to afford it. We see a lot of evictions. Evictions are up because people just can't meet the cost of rent, especially when it comes to a deposit first on top of a first month's rent. That's nearly impossible for some of our people. So maybe there's a way that we can figure out how to fix that.
On Thursday at noon, I was assigned a bill, so I'll be doing more homework on this and starting on Monday. It took about 4 different programs that we have unexpended funds that are designed to help people get into housing, and this will focus on unexpended funds, particularly for manufactured housing and maybe targeted toward veterans, but it's something that we'll take a look at. It is on housing, so I'll learn more about it this coming week. It's funnel proof, it's budgetary, so it doesn't have to be through our funnels already, and we'll see what dollars are available that haven't been used and see if that's an option for some folks.
So housing represents stability for a family and for an individual too. So when we talk about affordable housing, I would be talking about both veterans and homeless and families that most of their income is spent on their housing or their rent. And I think that we need to support many of the programs that already help individuals with housing. And once they're in that stable housing, they're able to get other wraparound services and so on for a family or for an individual. Even addressing the causes for the homelessness in the first place with that stability. So we're talking about Four Oaks and Horizons and Habitat for Humanity, Housing First, all the kinds of things that we have in the community that are working with families and individuals to make sure they have secure housing so they can get the other services that they need. So I think this is a multifaceted approach and a lot of things that we need to look at to be sure that we're helping them where we can. Thank you.
I'll actually follow up on what Representative Taylor actually talked about. It's a bill that I tried to get through last year, but it creates a manufactured housing revolving loan fund. It is another section off from an existing four different purpose fund, and it goes through the Iowa Finance Authority and would provide low interest loans through Iowa Finance Authority through a revolving loan fund that people can use to buy manufactured housing. So and we worked on this bill for a couple of years, so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get it through this year. It's already passed the Senate. which is good. It's further than it got last year. We didn't bring it to the floor last year, so I'm hopeful we'll have the votes to do that again this year. But I agree, we need to try to figure out ways where, wherever we can, this is just one, to provide access to loans where they can be low interest and to affordable housing. So that's something we're working on. Sounds like in a bipartisan way in the House.
For many years, I'm a ranking member on the Economic Development Budget Sub, which deals with workforce development, economic development, and then also IFA. And IFA and some of their funds, that the place where they do have state monies. We've been able to keep that money stable, which means that they haven't been cut in the last couple of years, but they also haven't seen an increase as well. And we have extreme affordable housing issues and needs all across the state of Iowa. We've also passed some legislation this year as well. I'm not sure where it is yet through the Senate, but looking at opening up some of our affordable housing and workforce development housing. The thing I guess I want to leave with folks on housing, not only is it a workforce development issue that we need housing on childcare and good schools to attract the people we need here for the state in the future, but also it's a community discussion as well. And I think all of you in the crowd, I would urge you to consider, if there is an affordable housing unit that's right next door to you, what do you do? And that's kind of, is it really a priority for you? And I understand all these people wrote down on here, they want to talk about affordable housing, but it also is a local level issue as well. And let not only your legislators know, but your city council men and women and your county board of supervisors as well, if affordable housing is a priority to you. I think, because we need to hear those voices. Often we hear voices of people who are frustrated of it, sort of not in my backyard kind of thing. And that makes it frustrating as policymakers too, because you try to do what's best for your entire community. Thank you very much for everybody coming today and listening to us, and I hope I'll see everybody at the parade, where we'll have plenty of candy.
Thank you. Okay, I want to take a little bit of a different approach to this, to add to what has already been said, because I appreciate everything that has already been said. I spent a lot of time over the last few years learning about a concept called environmental justice. And that's something that I would recommend, if you're not familiar with this idea, go home and Google that. It's environmental justice. And it's a key question about when we make environmental policies, who do they help and who do they hurt? Now, we've talked about the concerns that we have with canning the energy efficiency program here in the state of Iowa. And when people hear that, some people, kind of think about, we're bragging rights for energy, or, some people have really nice solar arrays on their homes or on their farms or things like that. There's one group of folks, and this does tie to housing, that don't get discussed a lot. There are folks in my district where I represent who are living in big old properties, where maybe the rent is a little bit lower, but when they're not energy efficient and there is no incentive to do so, we're having folks who are having stiflingly high energy bills. So for the folks who have been able to get into housing they can afford, that energy efficiency piece is a huge barrier for them when they can't pay those bills. So I certainly hope that we will be able to stop this bill that would gut the energy efficiency program, because that's going to create higher barriers for people because of their energy bills.
In the interest of time, let me just say on the pending bill that's related to the revolving loan fund for manufactured housing, that's only if somebody's putting a manufactured house or a mobile home on leased property. And I hope that the House can make sure that people have rights when they take money from the state, so they can't just be evicted for no reason at all. Thank you.
I would echo Senator Hogue, Representative Taylor, and Henson on their comments on housing.
Thank you all for coming. Remember, your vote is your voice, so vote. Thank you all, and you can clap now if you want.